Welcome back to Huawei Routing and Switching Elite Training for HCIE. Today topic we are going to discuss on route import and control. Let's start our part 6.
Right, so let's continue here. Next, we are going to look into import static route. Company A need to deploy network between R1 and R2. So here we have R1 and R2 and has the following requirement. The first requirement is to configure static route between R1 and R2. So this can be very simple. So R1 is going to point a default route to R2, and R2 is going to specify the specific route pointing to R1 as a gateway for this for entry. So that will be the first requirement. The second requirement is to import route 172.16x0 into OSPF. So I have 4 route that is inside R2, and you are only allowed to have 16.00 and 16.20. So only 2 route, 172.16.0.0/24 and 172.16.2.0/24 can be learned in the OSPF area. You are required to use a filter policy and the ACL. So we are going to filter just based on this 2 entry, 00 and 02. So our ACL, we are going to configure this ACL 172.16.0.0. Now because we only want to have a 0 and 2, in this case this will be our even number, we can use a wildcard of 0, 0. Okay, behind I'm going to use a 0, here I'm going to use a 2. Now if you use a 2, the wildcard will become 0000 0010. So 10 basically referring to those IP address that having a even number. Okay, so let's look into how to solve this problem. Alright, so let's go back to router 1 and I'm going to configure the default route. So as you can see over here, I have my interface 172.16.0.1, and if I go into my interface gig 002, I have all my IP addresses listed here. So I'm going to configure the default route, IP route static, the default route that I'm going to point to 12.1.1.2. Alright, so I'm in router 1, I'm pointing to router 2. Alright, so my static route configure, I'll go to router 2 and I'm going to configure the static route pointing to 172.16.0.0. Now I can actually use a /22 pointing to 12.1.1.1. Alright, now under normal circumstances this will have no issue and I can able to ping to all of this loopback interface. Okay, you can see that it's working, and I can ping to 3.1, no issue at all. Now the question required that you are allowed only to import 172.16.0.0 and 172.16.2.0, so which are all the even number. So if you are going to configure like this /22, then you will not able to meet the objective. So under the exam condition, please remember, alright, follow the requirement set by the examiner. So in this case, I'm going to undo IP route static all, and we have no choice here. We are going to configure the static route one by one. 172.16.0.0, 24, 12.1.1.1. Then I have the network 1. I have the network number 2. Okay, and I have the network number 3. Let me do a display IP route protocol static. Okay, so I think that this one I have some typo error. Undo 172 16.20.24 12.1.1.11 IP route static 172.16.2.0 24 12.1.1.1. Okay, so this time protocol static. Alright, so now we have the right static route. Let me ping to 17.01 172.16.01 to 172.16.3.1. Okay, so our static route has been configured. That's an easy part here. Now the next here is that the requirement to filter out only to permit 172.16.00 and 20. So we are going to do it on router 2. As you can see from my OSPF here, I have appearing with the router 3 and the router 4. And I'm going to create an ACL. Now remember that the question asks for both the filter policy and the ACL. So let me configure an ACL now. And I'm going to configure the first rules permit source 172.16.00 with a wildcard of 0020. Display ACL on, so you can see that this is my ACL. So the 2 wildcard here means that I'm going to filter just permitting. Alright, so my action here is permitting. I'm permitting only even number. Next, I go to the OSPF. I'm going to do a I'm going to do a slightly different. I'm going to do a let's see. Okay, I'm going to show you this route policy first. All right, let's call it a static permit node 10. Okay, so this is my first route policy. If I match ACL 2000. Okay, now see how am I going to do this. OSPF, I do an import route static with the route policy called static. Okay, so what's mean here is I'm going to do an import static into the OSPF, and that will be based on the requirement on the route policy. And the route policy here mentioned that I will only do a import if I match ACL 2000, and ACL 2000 here basically said that only the even number will be imported. So let's check out the result here. Display IP routing table protocol OSPF. Alright, so you can see that I do have the 00 and 20, whereas the 10 and 30 is not available here because this has been filtered, and the router 4 as well. So display IP routing table protocol OSPF. There you go. So if I go back to router 2 and I do a display ACL, you can see that it's being hit. But there's only one catch. The catch over here is that the question do ask for both filter policy and the ACL. Now even though you do achieve what's stated by the question, but that's not the answer they want. They want both the ACL and the filter policy together. Now under these circumstances, I will not allow to use the route policy, even though route policy do achieve what the question want. Okay, so I'm going to undo the import route. Go back into my OSPF, undo import route static. Okay, so I have removed my import route static. My ACL is still there because my ACL will be used with conjunction of the filter policy. So firstly, I'm going to import route static. Okay, I import the entire thing. So if I go back to router 3 and do a checking, alright, you can see that all of this route is available. Same go for router 4 as well. So next I'm going to use a filter policy. So now I'm going to use a filter policy. Alright, so they will ask for my ACL number. My ACL number is 2000. I can use a name if I want to, and I'm going to do an export. Alright, and this one is to filter based on the static. Do you see that? Alright, so we can actually mention what ACL, in what direction, okay, import or export, and for what protocol. Okay, so I press enter, And when I go back to router 3 and I check, alright, you can see that we do have the same result, alright, on both the router 3 and router 4, but this result is what the question want. And when I go back into here, display ACL, that's router 2, as you can see, again, it's been matched. Alright, so this is on this particular lab. Let's move on. Alright, so as you can see that this is the answer for our lab earlier on. So we have a default route pointing to 12.112, and this is our 4 static route. We have our ACL, and we have the import route static plus the filter policy. Alright, so the next requirement here is company A need to implement network interconnection and communication has the following requirement. We need to perform bidirectional. Alright, so this is not a unidirectional. Bidirectional means that we are going to import in both way on router 3 and router 4. So that will be easy. OSPF into RIP, RIP into OSPF. So if you look into our answer here, so once we do both import, alright, so on the OSPF we are going to import RIP, RIP we are going to do an import OSPF on both the router. Now what you can see from here is the route will be imported to both sides. Alright, so let's look into our lab now. Alright, so let's jump back to router 3, display IP routing table. So as you can see that I have the OASE that is getting from the router 2. Okay, so here I have it, and if I go to router 4, alright, so I do have it as well, so that will be on 24.112. But router 5, we still have not received anything yet, right? So those 172 is not available here yet because we have not do the import route. So let's do on router 3 first. So in router 3, I'm go to the OSPF. I'm going to import the RIP. Okay, I'm going to import the RIP. So whatever 10 network here, it will be available in router 2. Alright, so as you can see from here, I have the 10 network. Okay, those are the 10 network that's from the router 5. Okay, so if I go to the router 5, because I just do a unidirectional, I still have not received anything on the 172. Okay, so I'll go back into the router 3, I'll go to RIP, then I do an import route OSPF. Okay, so this time router 5 should have the 172. There you go. Alright, so I have 172.16.0 and 172.16.2. But the question asks for 2 node bidirectional importing. So I just did it on R3 just now, right? Okay, I'm going to do it on R4. So in R4, OSPF import route RIP. And I go to RIP, I do an import route OSPF. There you go. So I have performed what the question required. So both sides now should have the route. So if I go into the R5 and when I do a display IP route, okay, so you can see that I have the 172 as well as a 0 and 172.16.2.0. Okay.
Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel.